For 10 years, Daniel kept a secret so heavy it reshaped his entire life, casting a long, cold shadow over everything he did. It began when he was 16, on a night that started like any other, but ended with a silence that would last a decade. This is the story of that silence, and what happened when it was finally broken. 16-year-old Daniel was the kind of kid you'd expect to have it all figured out. He was smart, had a close-knit group of friends, and was just starting to think about college and the future. Life was a straight, sunlit road. But one autumn evening, that road took a sharp, dark turn. He was walking home from a friend's house, the air crisp with the smell of fallen leaves. The familiar shortcut through the park felt different that night. An unsettling stillness hung in the air, broken by the snap of a twig behind him. What happened next was a blur of fear and confusion, a moment that would fracture his world into a before and an after. He made it home, but the boy who walked through the door wasn't the same one who had left. The light in his eyes had dimmed, replaced by a guarded, haunted look. His parents noticed the change immediately. Their once outgoing son became withdrawn, quiet. He'd spend hours in his room, staring at the ceiling. When they asked what was wrong, he'd just shake his head. "I'm just tired," he'd say. But it was a lie. He wasn't tired. He was terrified. The secret had taken root. The decade that followed was a masterclass in deception. On the surface, Daniel lived a normal life. He finished high school, went to college, and even got a job in a quiet bookstore. He was polite, responsible, a model employee. But beneath the calm exterior, a storm was raging. The trauma manifested in 1,000 small ways. He couldn't stand to be in crowded places, the press of bodies making his skin crawl. He avoided relationships, building walls around his heart so high that no one could ever get close enough to see the cracks. Friendship was a performance. He'd laugh at jokes he didn't hear and nod along to conversations he wasn't part of. His nights were the worst. Sleep offered no escape, only a replay of that evening in the park. He'd wake up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding against his ribs, the silence of his apartment amplifying the screams trapped in his throat. He tried to outrun the memory. He moved cities twice, hoping a new landscape would erase the old one. But the shadow followed him, constant, unwelcome companion. He was a ghost in his own life, watching the world go by from behind a thick pane of glass, convinced he was alone in his silent prison. He believed speaking up would only make it worse, that no one would understand, that it was his burden to carry alone. So he carried it, year after agonizing year. Then, one rainy Tuesday morning, everything changed. Daniel was 26, shelving books at work when a news report on the small TV behind the counter caught his attention. The face on the screen was more lined, but it was unmistakable. It was him, the man from the park. The report detailed a recent, similar incident in a nearby town. The police had a suspect in custody, but they believed there might be other victims who had never come forward. As Daniel listened, the world around him faded away. The dusty smell of old books, the gentle hum of the heater, the soft chatter of customers, it all vanished. All he could hear was the frantic thumping of his own heart. A decade of suppressed fear and anger surged to the surface. He saw the face of the 16-year-old boy he used to be, and for the first time, he felt an overwhelming need to fight for him. The internal battle was fierce. The voice of fear that had been his only companion for 10 years screamed at him to stay silent, to run, to hide. But a new voice, quiet but resolute, whispered back, "No more." He walked out of the bookstore, leaving his apron on the counter, and didn't look back. His feet carried him, almost on their own, through the rain-slick streets to the local police station. Standing outside the imposing brick building, he took a deep breath. It was the hardest step he'd ever taken. He pushed the heavy door open, the little bell above it chiming his arrival. A tired-looking detective looked up from her desk. "Can I help you?" she asked. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper, rusty from a decade of disuse on this one topic. "I need to report something," he said. "It happened a long time ago." Giving the statement was like lancing a wound that had been festering for years. The words tumbled out, disjointed at first, then flowing into a coherent, horrifying narrative. He spoke for hours, the detective listening with patience and empathy. With every word he spoke, he could feel a fraction of the immense weight lifting from his shoulders. He walked out of that station not as a victim, but as a survivor. The silence was finally broken. The legal process was grueling. It forced Daniel to revisit the darkest moments of his life in excruciating detail. There were interviews, depositions, and a trial that put his trauma under a public microscope. The defense attorney tried to discredit him, to twist his silence into an admission of falsehood. But Daniel held firm. Supported by the detective who first took his statement and a victim's advocate, he found a strength he never knew he possessed. He looked his attacker in the eye from the witness stand and told the truth, his voice clear and steady. He wasn't just speaking for himself anymore. He was speaking for the 16-year-old boy who couldn't, and for any others who might have been silenced by the same man. His testimony, combined with the evidence from the more recent case, was powerful. The jury deliberated for less than a day. The verdict came back, guilty on all counts. As the judge read the sentence, a profound sense of relief washed over Daniel. It wasn't about revenge. It was about closure. It was the world finally acknowledging his pain, validating his truth. Justice, after a decade of waiting in the dark, had finally arrived. The long shadow that had followed him for so long began to recede, replaced by the first rays of a new dawn. The journey to healing is long, but for Daniel, it had finally begun. Breaking his silence didn't erase the past, but it reclaimed his future. It transformed a secret that had isolated him into a story that could empower others. His story is a powerful reminder that trauma does not have to be a life sentence of silence. Speaking your truth, no matter how long it takes, can be the first step toward healing and justice. If you or someone you know is struggling with the weight of a secret, please know you are not alone. There are people who will listen, who will believe you, and who can help. Reaching out is a sign of incredible strength. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing for more stories like this. Your support helps us continue to share these important narratives.